Hello and welcome to another episode of Graham Hughes' Pubcast, and today I am joined by Professor Thom of Durham University, Dean of Law and Government.
Yes.
And we're going to have a quick chat about what happened. I don't want to say I told you so,
Nightmare.
but I told you so. I did say that Corbyn was tremendously unpopular and he would not win an election.
Yeah, well, he didn't win the election and he was unpopular.
Did you know how unpopular he was, or did you think I was just making it up?
I didn't think you were making it up. What I was skeptical about was exactly how much it was going to impact on people making a choice, given the numbers of problems that there were. I mean, so at the beginning, as the election was kicking off, we were heading into wintertime. A&E waiting times at the record worst levels ever. These are bad times for conservatives, bad time for a government to be contesting an election at a time like that. I thought that that was going to be a big problem, that if the NHS could be the big issue and the economy not too far behind, that this could potentially counteract the negative public perceptions, manufactured or otherwise, of Corbyn, and I was wrong. But what was interesting to me
also,
about
Brexit's
why I was wrong, well, yes and no.
Did
yes
you have
and no.
any money riding on it not happening?
No,
No.
I'm not a betting man.
Never mind.
I don't believe in betting. But what was surprising to me, and I think what's very alarming for my Labour Party friends, whoever they are supporting now, that the NHS was, according to Lord Ashcroft's polling, take it with whatever pinches of salt you want to, it did find that the number one issue for voters during the general election was the NHS, that the economy was for most voters second, immigration was only towards the bottom of the top 10 for Tory voters.
10 years ago, the EU was only the top issue for 1% of voters.
Yeah, and EU was also, I think, was not first, second, or often for many third for many voters. And so this should have been one that Labour should have, I don't want to say walked, but should have done much better.
I saw polling over the summer which suggested that if there was an election the next day, it would be a landslide victory for the Conservatives. And this is during the days of when Theresa May was stepping down and Boris Johnson was becoming Prime Minister and he was sacking 21 of his MPs and all this nonsense was going on. It still said, people will vote for for Labour. And if I saw that, surely Labour saw that and went, oh, we've got to do stuff about this. And their election strategy seemed to me, at a sort of local level for Labour supporters, was to tell people like me to F off and join the Tories because I don't like Corbyn.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of the messaging was around that, and that kind of stuff was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we want, for Labour supporters, we want as many people to support them as possible, and that was a very big mistake. That was not the view message that a lot of people heard, and that was just ridiculous. But previous general election, Corbyn wasn't much more popular than he was now, yet the party was in a different position, didn't do as terribly.
He was a lot more popular
still
then,
lost.
because he still had the benefit of the doubt. He'd only been in office for a year and a half.
Short while,
and a lot of people were upset about the referendum result and trusted Labour to take it to the Tories. Whereas I, in that election, was just absolutely incandescent.
Yes, I recall.
Over the 3-line whip.
Yes.
That was put on the Labour Party to activate Article 50 with no provisos and no safeguards for EU citizens, which we've seen this week. Any safeguards for the EU citizens have been thrown out the window. They weren't even allowed to appeal if their settled status is turned down.
They have to make another application. It's ridiculous. I think, though, that one or two of the things I think that so all these other factors are definitely there. I think some of the reasons, so at the end of the day, the Tories basically kept their vote. They had a 1% rise in the vote share over last time.
Basically,
nothing really changed.
Votes, but Labour lost 2.6 million.
But they lost quite a few.
So this wasn't a landslide win.
No,
it was a landslide loss.
I think that's right. I think that's right. So I think to a degree it's a bit deceptive. Yes, there's this, because of the first past the post system and all the rest of it. The Tories have this, do have a resounding victory, have this massive majority, but it wasn't like a massive part of the country was kind of on the streets embracing the Tories. It was just really the same percentage that were still doing it, but the Labour support eroded away to elsewhere. I think there's some extra reasons for this, in addition to the unpopularity of Corbyn on the street and so on. I think what also hurt them quite a lot was a very badly run campaign. And what I mean by very badly run campaign, I mean looking at where your marginal seats, the seats you need to win, where you should be investing your resources, and saying, as apparently the leader's office was doing, we don't trust any of these poll numbers, whether or not they, for whatever reason, we're not going to listen to them. And there was some, I thought, crazy stuff going on. I mean, one of the crazier things I think that happened, I'm a friend of Laura Pidcock. I think very highly of her. I've known her for a very long time. She was representing what was the safe Labour seats of Northwest Durham, which she lost.
Which is now Conservative.
Which is mental. Theresa May's first election she contested was for Northwest Durham. It was a place where Tories would just kind of learn to campaign with this knowledge that they were definitely going to lose. Yet, it went strongly Conservative. And you look at this massive kind of re-election campaign launch, this full house, Liam Young, the columnist there to help do things, and the t-shirts with her name on them as people are talking about her, maybe deputy leader, maybe something else. And I thought, boy, that was miscalculated.
Almost as miscalculated as Joe Swinson's "I'm going to be the Prime Minister" line.
Boy, that was really...
how did that work out,
ouch.
Joe?
Yeah, I felt sorry about that. I felt even worse for her when I saw Nicola Sturgeon jumping up and down with the light. I thought that was really, really not on.
I feel like Joe Swinson got what she deserved. To be honest, I know this sounds horrible, but it was her and Ian Blackford, the SNP, who decided that they were going to go with the Tory election idea when they had Boris Johnson in a box. Yeah, and
it was a mistake.
For the SNP, it was a mistake. It was great for them.
Oh, sure.
It bolsters their point about, if you're going to say you live in a democracy, give the people of Scotland a voice.
Yes.
Oh, but you had a choice in 2014. Yes, but things have changed. Things have changed
substantively,
massively.
Yes.
Since then. And the fact that Scotland voted to remain overwhelmingly 62% to remain in the EU and is being dragged out against its will changes things.
Absolutely.
And it's like, for me, it's like, when you get married, it's a lifetime commitment. It's a lifetime commitment.
Yes.
Yeah, but you've been having this affair.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's a lifetime commitment. Yeah, but you've broken the rules before we did, and now we're feeling like, hey, I know it was supposed to be a once in a generation thing, but things have changed. And I really hate that expression, once in a generation.
I agree.
It's way too much pressure on people. In a democracy, we can have an election every 2 years, but...
Well, we are at the moment. We're at the moment.
But yeah, let's talk where Labour went wrong. The aggression that I suffered for the last few years has just been insane. And it's been things like when I was helping to organise the march against the Tories in London, the other pro-EU lot. We had this meeting with the People's Assembly, Labour People's Assembly, who will be marching with the unions, they'll be marching with the NHS, they'll have this, this march. A few thousand people will be coming to their march, a few thousand people will be coming to ours, and we were marching down the same road at different times of the day. And they were upset about this because they were like, well, what if you glue yourself to a lamppost and we can't get through? And we're like, have you seen the people who go on pro-EU marches? They're all little grannies like knitting as they march.
Sure, with the odd blue hat.
The chief, the police in Manchester said, why don't you all march together?
Yeah.
And it was like a Monty Python moment. It's like, why do you all fight together against the common enemy?
We are the People's Front of Judea.
Yeah, the popular People's Front of Judea. And I said, I'd love to. Yeah, the police chief was talking about, because they're marching sections anyway, so you have different unions marching with the banners in
Yes.
blocks. Why not just tag the EU
Yes, that's
lot
right.
at the back? And the People's Assembly, Labour representatives were like, no, we don't want to see a single EU flag. And that is, we're all marching together against the Conservatives, but we have to do so separately, because the feeling that they had to not upset the Eurosceptics in the Labour Party, because obviously that went all the way to the top. And yeah, it's just
I think, well, yeah.
You've
Not
got a
good.
situation where Seamus Milne hasn't stood down.
Yes.
Corbyn said he's going to stand down.
Nor is
but
Kerry Murphy.
hasn't. And something that bothers me, and we talked about this a little bit in one of the previous podcasts about how many children from, or students from private schools come to Durham. Corbyn went to a private prep school. Milne went to a private school. Boris Johnson went to a private school. Cummings went to a private school here in Durham. What's his name?
It was a bouncing clue.
Farage went to a private school. And I'm not saying we should abolish private schools necessarily, but it just says something. It says they were all born into wealth. And I think that if I had left school with 2 E's at A level, like Corbyn did, I would never dream of aspiring to high office like the leader of the Her Majesty's most loyal opposition.
Indeed.
And I think that's really unfair.
Yeah.
And I think it just shows a basic problem that we have in society. And a lot of people got onto that. They're like, well, I don't know this guy. He's from down south. I'm not, he came up here for the miners.
Yes, he's coming each year.
The,
I've been with him. I've been on the balcony with Corbyn.
So here every year.
I mean, I don't have any objection to people who
I
I don't have any objection to people who have whatever their grades are. I don't worry if they have a university degree. One of the things I quite like, I mean, I be careful where I say this. Don't tell the Vice Chancellor this, but I don't. Yeah. We'll keep it our secret. But I don't. I mean, one of the things I quite like about the UK in general. This is a related but maybe separate point, is that I don't have any. Where I come from, the United States, if you want to do any job, you need at least an associate bachelor's degree, or if not a BA degree or something like that. You need to have something like this post high school to do most of the jobs from which you can make a living and raise a family. And one thing I've quite liked about the UK is that that's not true. Yes, things are moving in a certain direction, but you still need. Well, but even if you're not. But I know a lot of people are not born into wealth and are very successful, not just in trades, but also in, say, IT world or project management. We're able to do things without having a degree, and I think that's a good thing.
Do you think the US has less social mobility than the UK then?
Yes.
Oh wow. That's interesting.
Yes. I think. This maybe is a topic for another podcast, but I think very much that the so-called American dream of kind of pulling yourself up on your bootstraps and making a thing for yourself is more possible in this class-based society we have in the UK than it is, and not by much. I think it is more possible here than it is in the United States. The United States is far more closed to movement up and down class in here.
Okay, I can see that because there's less of a safety net in America.
There's no safety net.
If you're poor and you make one mistake, that's it. You're out. It's one strike and you're out.
That's right. Well, let me give you an example or two. We're at a university. I'll give a university-related example that maybe isn't the best one I could use, but it's one I'll use anyway. So here, you get a degree, get your PhD. If you want to be an academic, you get your degree from a place no one's ever heard of. You can still get a job at Durham or Oxford or Cambridge because there's the great leveler. There's this national competition on research, and if you're able to publish, and publishing is done, your name is anonymous, the referees, the reviewers don't know your name, do not know what institution you're from. Yes, there are advantages to working with the best people who are the most connected, who are in more resource departments, and they will typically find it easier and be more successful at publishing than those who have not. But those who went to places people have not heard of are able to, if they're able to publish, they can then go anywhere. They can then do anything here. And there are people here, I think it's great, not just at this university but others, who have degrees from various places that folks have not heard of. My first degree is from William Patterson in New Jersey. No one's really, unless you did music, is a very strong music program still. People haven't, and I originally went to do music. People have not heard of it. It's in North New Jersey outside of New York City.
What instruments did you
Guitar.
Sing? Guitar.
Yeah, I definitely don't sing. But
are you still play the guitar?
I do. Next podcast.
Do some anti-Trump songs.
For Remain, and I'm very happy to go down this road, Graham. You write the lyrics and leave the strumming to me. But so that's a great thing. Whereas, say, in the United States, in order to get a job interview, whether to get a look in, it's almost entirely down to pedigree. So where did you study? What institution are you from? What school did you go to?
Yeah.
Is a massive, massive thing back home. I know people very well who are good friends, be careful where I go with this, who, let's just say, had a famous supervisor, went to a top 10 university for their PhD training, no publications or next to no publications, and getting dozens of job interviews and offers. Couldn't happen here. So I think that's and that what you see with the universities in terms of hiring, you went to the right place and the right thing. Yes, I take the point about schools.
How many of our prime ministers went to Eton? 19?
Yeah,
and 19 went to the same school.
And for prime ministers who went to university, there's been none since the Second World War that didn't go to Oxford.
Yeah.
All did.
Did John Major go to Oxford?
Those who went to university.
Oh,
yeah. John Major did. There's another one I forget off the top of my head, but the others all went to Oxford.
Wow. Yeah. So I think.
But if Keir Starmer wins the leadership election and becomes prime minister, Leeds.
He went to Leeds.
He went to Leeds.
And he was the director of public prosecutions.
Incredibly.
So he knows the law, which is really great. But we're going to come on to the leadership in a bit.
Go wherever you like.
Let's continue to rake over the coals of
Indeed.
what went wrong. What went right for the campaign for Labour? Anything?
What went right is that the what was most in people's minds and making a mark in the box on voting day was the NHS. And correspondingly, what went bad.
They all voted for the Conservatives.
Well, that's the problem. So the election was about issues where traditionally Labour has performed far ahead of the Conservatives. The problem, one of the problems for the Labour Party, it's something I think is a very serious problem for the Labour Party, is that last month people were not as worried about the Tories with the NHS as they have been in the past.
I don't think it's...
If you have an election about certain issues that are more conservative-minded, then that will be a very powerful thing towards that party. But you had something that should have supported Labour, and it didn't.
Well, the big thing that should have supported Labour that didn't is the Remain movement.
Sure, that also was
a
an
million activists who are prepared to get off their arses and go down to London and march twice.
Yeah.
Those are the type of people who would, on a wet, wintry...
Yes.
Winter night, go out and knock on doors and say, vote for Labour.
Yeah.
They could have had all of us.
They really could, but they didn't want us.
Yeah.
And I feel, as a pro-EU activist, I feel like the last 3 years we have been humiliated. I think it's humiliating to have a march of 1 million people opposing what the government's doing and not have the leader of the opposition support us in any way, shape or form. And in fact, go and do something else on that day, as if to say, oh no, I've got something much better to do. I'm off to Morecambe, I'm going to give a prize to a woman from Argentina or Chile or something. It was just, it felt like we were being bullied. We were being sort of, oh, shut up, simmer down. And that for me was tremendously upsetting. And trying to step out of my role as an EU activist and just go, they had 1 million people ready to go, 1 million activists who would have supported them if they said, we're going to stop, well, not say stop Brexit, but to have a referendum, a confirmatory referendum on Johnson's deal. Not on a deal perhaps in the future, and we're not going to say whether we want it or not, absolutely categorical, we will have a referendum on Johnson's deal and we will campaign to remain. And that would have activated 1 million people to come out. And instead, we've got this situation where you've got people like Barry Gardner, and I think it was Ian Lavery maybe, who was saying that it was the Remainers' fault that they lost. And I'm just like, okay, once they simmer down, you know, it's like it's not true. Like asking a victim, you know, why they were walking down that street.
But I also disagree with him. I think that they're absolutely wrong about that. Not only is all the polling, all the evidence that Brexit was not only, well, it wasn't the #1 factor turning people off from voting Labour. They really got this wrong. And Corbyn was the big issue, turning a lot of Labour supporters off, and by quite a lot. It wasn't like it was by 5 points more, or just a little bit more. It was substantially more, and I think so. They've really got this wrong. And I think what they've also got wrong were two other things. One more obvious perhaps than the other. So I always try to have an interesting slant, or at least an attempt at an interesting slant, to make this my contributions to the podcast worth listening to. So the less interesting bit that you and others will surely have clocked, and was also criticized, been very critical of Labour, was that the official policy was on Brexit, right, we're going to negotiate our own deal, after being very critical of Boris Johnson and company. You can't do these things properly in a few months, that they were going to spend a few months of their own doing some new deal. We're going to say much about what that new deal was going to be other than better, and then going to have a referendum effectively on that new deal, that they won't tell us anything what this thing is in feature at some point, on a timetable that previously was said to be unrealistic, and be neutral on it. Now, the criticisms of this were many. One of them was, why the heck would you be trying to negotiate a deal that you then wouldn't want to campaign for? Why, so if, Brexit's terrible, and all those other things like that, and you can do a better deal than the Tories, all right, then why not do that? And why would the European Union want to give you a deal, or give you a kind of a better deal for Britain that could make other countries in Europe, make it more attractive maybe? Oh, this would be a less painful way of exiting. Why would they do that for a group that wouldn't be committed to campaigning for that view? That didn't make any sense. So I think that was a big error, and in a sense it repeats to a degree David Cameron's original error. Hey, remain and leave. Leave. God only knows what leaving means. Whoever during the Brexit campaign you spoke to gave you a different version of what Brexit means. But David Cameron, what does remain mean? It doesn't mean staying in the European Union as it is. It means that we're going to have a reformed EU, I think. Of what was it? A red card for national governments on certain legislation. We were going to have an emergency brake on pulled in someone else's car on migrants, and these are all these things that the European Union said that they, well, maybe will do, but hadn't actually signed up to. So kind of getting people to vote for staying in a European Union that didn't quite exist. Wasn't really there. Well, and this is worse.
It's clear messaging. It's the lack of clear messaging.
People didn't know what that thing was.
At least they knew that Cameron was standing up and saying we should
stay in the European
Union.
Yeah. And now you don't have that.
A week before the referendum vote, or the fraud-referendum, as I like to call it, a week before it, in a poll, it showed that 50% of Labour voters didn't know if Labour was for or against staying in the EU.
Sure.
That is disgraceful. That is absolutely disgraceful.
Compounded
with what happened in with the activation of Article 50 in January, February of 2017, and then the election result that Corbyn lost the election. He lost, but he behaved like he won. And he said afterwards, it was very clear who won that election. It was like, it wasn't
it was. That's
but
right.
The excuse from Labour was, well, the polls were really bad, so we were expected to do really, really badly, and we did better than expected, even though we still lost. And this narrative kept on going until it got to such a ridiculous point in 2019 where people were going, you can't trust the polls. It's like, well, hang on, you trusted the polls
Last
then,
time,
and you've used that as justification for keeping Jeremy Corbyn on as leader, when, I know he's very popular with the base, but with the rest of the country, he is tremendously unpopular. And I knew that by going to pro-EU meetings and rallies and things all over the country, and meeting people who are lifelong Labour voters, Labour members. I was a Labour member before I was kicked out. But yeah, it's okay.
We'd still be friends.
I was kicked out for anti-Semitism. No, I wasn't really.
No, definitely not.
I wouldn't be kicked out for that.
Definitely not.
I felt
We weren't alone.
politically homeless.
You weren't alone.
I didn't feel like anyone was representing me. I could have a Conservative Brexit or a Labour Brexit, or the Lib Dems are just absolute. You know, they're not going to win.
No, well,
when they lost all their seats that they had, because they did have 19 seats. It was just the moment that she said, "I'm going to be Prime Minister," and there's children who are like, "You've got 19 seats. You know what?
How is that going to happen? You're not going to be that kind of a power broker.
Don't patronise me.
If Nick couldn't do it, you definitely won't.
Going back to clear messaging, and this is a huge problem for Labour.
Yep.
If they don't know where you're for or against leaving the EU. People didn't know what Labour's stance was on voting reform.
Yeah.
It's a huge issue for a lot of people.
Absolutely right.
And it was wait and see.
Yeah.
We didn't know what Labour's policy was on, on negotiating Brexit with the EU.
But let me say something this is my attempt at an interesting angle. Here it comes on this particular point. So
get Brexit done. That's very
well, I'll also come to that. So this thought that Brexit was somehow the undoing of Corbyn, and that the undoing and Brexit was a problem for Corbyn because of all those pesky Remainers that were causing trouble, and if only the Remainers would shut up or let the Lexits or whatever they want to call themselves keep the floor, that everything would have been much better and simpler. I mean, one of the major reasons that I don't agree with that at all is, of course, over 85% of Labour Party members, who still are members, were for Remain. So this thought about, yes, the party needs to be more responsive and look to attract and speak to non-party members, but the party members themselves are overwhelmingly for Remain, and that they are somehow a problem is something, that the voters are somehow a problem, and that the party members are a problem. It just, the only people who are not a problem are those who have a particular ideological, wear a certain type of T-shirt is just really not on.
And you're right. And one of the things that irked me back in 2015 when we had this leadership election was the fact that me, as someone who had been a Labour Party member for 15 years, my vote for leader was worth just as much as someone who had never voted Labour, was in fact a Conservative Lord or MP who paid £3 on the website
and they did.
Vote.
And they did.
And who were they going to vote for? Were they going to vote for the competent leader who could actually, stick one to the Tories? No, they were going to vote for a gardener who was going to turn up and say, today I'm going to just bore everyone.
Well, I heard yesterday by a member of the Conservative Party that he knows of hundreds of people who are preparing to spend £25. They're ending their membership with the Conservative Party.
I'm encouraging people to join the Labour Party or join as an associate member. You've got a 48-hour window to join for £25 as an associate member, and I think even expelled members, such as myself, might be able to do this. Wink, wink. I don't know. We'll get
I don't make the rules.
But you'll be able to vote on the leadership
election, which we're going to come to in a bit.
Yes. But I do want to throw this point in, and that is, so there's this problem about, Brexit was a problem for Corbyn, and the issue, this is the argument, and that it's those pesky Remainers who are an overwhelming majority of the membership were a problem. The same membership that has been very supportive of Corbyn himself has been a big problem for Corbyn's election. When I was at the last Labour Party conference, there was the highlight, or the controversy, highlight just of the news coverage, was around a particular vote taken on the floor. And I was there for this, and I was speaking to journalists about this because I was shocked myself. So we saw the chair. So this is about what Labour Party's position would be on Brexit. And the outcome of this particular vote I'm talking about was to be neutral, was to sit on the fence, was to argue for some type of deal, but to take no sides, whether we were going to support the deal we would be negotiating or trying to remain. Now, when I looked down on the floor, hand on heart, and I agreed with the chair's original decision. She originally said that the motion carried. Sorry, that going for remain had carried. They'd gone that way. But then it said
Thom came over, whispered in her ear.
Said that she disagreed, and that and so the chair said, right, Jenny said that Jenny says I'm mistaken or I made a mistake, and that it had not carried, and that the policy of the Labour Party would not be to take a side on Remain, which was what was at issue, but instead would do the sitting on the fence view, as it's been called. And there, so people were exploding with anger and concern because it was certainly close by all accounts. It did look to me like choosing Remain had won. The chair refused to do a count of ballots. There was a worry about, was everyone raising their hand an eligible person to vote at the time? These are the things that were said at that time. Anyway, the only point I'd make about this is that it was the leadership's view that we as a party should take no position on Leave or Remain, that we should be on the fence and not take sides. That particular view, and when that happened, the thought was that would be a way of appealing to both sides by not taking a side, and that this is the view of the leadership. And this is what that Corbyn's office was arguing for. And when it won, and I think there's recordings of this that were played on the news, the people started singing, "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn." So to hear now, after the general election has happened, when we see that Brexit was a factor, in addition to Corbyn's unpopularity on the doorstep, and you hear these complaints, oh, well, the problem is Brexit and Remainers and other stuff. Hang on a second, everybody. The position that the party had, it went into the general election, not only was a democratic, call it what you will, through the process, view of the party, but it was the position that was argued for by the leadership and not the view of Keir Starmer. Keir argued to take a side on Remain, and a view that I shared. And he lost. And to hear some in the leadership be critical of the Remainers or that Starmer and others got things wrong, it's up to people to maybe...
Still here.
I just find that...
It's someone else's fault. Jeremy Corbyn struggled to say sorry about anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. Famously, the Labour Party is being investigated by the Equality and Human Rights Commission.
Worse, people have been put forward for, people have been arrested.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've read the submission
getting worse.
by the Jewish Movement for Labour, the Jewish Labour Movement, JLM, and they've been part of Labour for over 100 years.
Yeah.
And the submission that they gave, which got leaked, is horrific. It's absolutely horrific to read. And the amount of bullying that went on, the amount of bigotry, and this conflating what's going on in Israel with just being horrible to Jews is like it's some kind of barrier, it's some kind of protection, and it's this thing that the middle class seem to think it's acceptable to discriminate against, in their little circles, at the dinner parties, to discriminate against Jews because of what the Israeli government do. And that is as morally abhorrent as being nasty to someone who's black because of what Idi Amin did, or what the Congolese government's doing right now. You can't look at it that way. You can't look at someone who says I'm Muslim and go, oh right, okay, well you support what Saudi Arabia is doing in Yemen, don't you?
Islamic State.
Why didn't you stop bombing the Yemenis? And it's like,
nothing to do with it. I've got nothing to do with it.
It's a government of a different country.
Yeah.
But that conflation of those two issues is anti-Semitism and what is it? And it's really hard to have that conversation with anyone who is anti-Semitic because they don't get it. Yeah. And you say to them, blah, 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 this is why they shouldn't be doing it. And they'll always bring up Israel every time. It's like you can play anti-Semitism bingo. Like, oh, Israel, here we go. And the Israeli government is shit. But you know what? Our government's shit, the American government's shit, the Iraqi government's shit, the Iranian government's shit, the Saudi Arabian government's shit.
Lots of governments have got lots of problems. I mean, the anti-Semitism stuff, to a degree, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what the final report is, if only to confirm or deny all the things that we begin to think are true, that there is a significant problem. There's certainly been a lot of really horrific things going on that are being said.
You know already that they're preparing their defence. But who's on the board of the Equalities and Human Rights Committee?
Oh, right, I've not seen
Do you know what I mean? This stuff is already getting out there in social media to cast a little bit of a doubt on whether, you know, things are above board with that report. And it's like, what I've seen and what I've experienced online, what people have said, what people have thought it's acceptable to say online, you know, Labour members, has just been, I can't believe that you think this is acceptable. And so Jeremy Corbyn's lack of leadership when it came to anti-Semitism, and whether he's an anti-Semite himself, you know, he's either anti-Semitic, just the most unlucky anti-racist activist in the world. But that's not as much of an issue. Well, it is an issue, but I mean, not as much an issue as the lack of leadership over. And you know, people say you're anti-Semitic. Your first response to that shouldn't be to blame the victim. It shouldn't be to be, you know, but this is your fault that I'm saying this.
It's an obvious thought. I think everyone where there, you know. Just because someone's accused of things doesn't mean they should be expelled. But where people are accused of anti-Semitic stuff, and there's some evidence that people have been saying all the things that you're talking about, which is happening, they should be expelled immediately, and there should be no tears.
Why did he?
Should be no tears.
You got half a million members. I mean, you're gonna have some bad apples. Get rid of them.
Exactly.
You know, no, we need this one, because if you cling on to that one anti-Semite,
You're going to lose 10 other people who saw that message and went, hang on, how's the party standing for this? I don't
I think I don't know what the thinking is. If I don't know why there's been this reluctance to. I mean, one of the things that's been, I think, will be something I expect that will be highlighted in the report, is that the party has moved like lightning to expel permanently people on, I think, a fraudulent basis. For example, Alistair Campbell.
Alistair Campbell?
Yeah, so Alistair Campbell. Lots of things not to like about Alistair Campbell. I can give you a list.
He plays the bagpipes, which are a form of torture.
Well, bagpipes are probably, for me, one of his more redeeming features. Second, maybe a support of Burnley Football Club. I like the North. But other than that, everything else, I've got lots of issues with, including marching against the war. But all those things said, I mean, he's surely someone that the inner circle really didn't like because of the Iraq War and all the rest of it. And I share the view. I don't like that stuff either. But there's nothing in the party rule book that says if you supported the Iraq War, then you are not to be a member of the party anymore. Otherwise, Barry Gardner, who voted for the war, he'd be out himself. I mean, that can't be. That, I mean, that's not right. He was surely. The reason why he was expelled, of course, as he said after the general election, the last general election, well, the one before the last general election, he had voted Liberal Democrat, immediately thrown out. Now, you can't, as a member, talk about voting for other parties in the run-up to the general election, but afterwards, I believe that it would be okay to do that. I'm mistaken. You're absolutely right. But they expelled him immediately for that, which I think they shouldn't have done and probably couldn't have done. And if he wanted to appeal it, I think he would probably do so successfully. Though I say that not because I like him or think well of things he did, but I just playing the rule book. On the other side, you've got folks who have this kind of, it would seem, this long litany, this list of all the stuff that's been said on the anti-Semitism angle, who do not being expelled at all, or action not being taken very swiftly. And it's like, well, how is don't call it a kangaroo court, but how has the decision-making process kind of boom, you're out, happened so quickly for the one person on something, for one comment to the press or something, and not nearly as swiftly or not at all for folks doing things potentially more damaging for the party.
You just touched on something that is another sort of brick in the wall, or whatever you want to call it, for Labour's downfall. And it's this idea that we have to diss the Blair years, the Blair Campbell years. And Lord Adonis put up something, a good little tweet up, which I keep retweeting because I really like it. It just says, defeat, 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 defeat. Blair, Blair, Blair. Defeat, 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 defeat. Spot the pattern. And for Labour now, as under Corbyn, which is a different party, it's a very different party to the party that I joined back at the beginning.
Likewise,
of the
me too.
For them just to spend all their time saying to anyone who was of my generation who voted Labour back in 1997, when they had that landslide election, they got the Conservatives down to 157 seats.
Yeah, incredible.
I mean...
yeah.
What?
Oh, to have those days come back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So you've got a situation where the Labour did really, really well in the past. And they did it by attracting centralists. And now, centralists like myself, because I'm not far left, are being called an extreme centralist, which is something
that's interesting. How can you be an extreme centralist?
Well, that was something that was put in a tweet by...
I'm sure you're right, you recall that, but
Who was the Greek finance minister for about a year?
Oh, yes, it's him. Yes, I know what you're talking about. He called you that.
No, he put it on a tweet.
Oh, wow.
He called the extreme centralists.
Oh, wow. Right.
And his name escapes me, which is annoying.
Okay.
But so you've got people saying, and if you dared criticise Corbyn or the way that Labour was going, or dare say, listen, this is going to be election wipeout, they pointed the finger at you and called you a Blairite. Oh, you're a Blairite. And that really, to me, signalled the end of this whole thing, because how can you win an election if you are going to look at the political spectrum and say we are only going to take votes from these people?
Sure.
You know, most people are in the middle, and most people don't really care that much about politics.
Sure. No, that's absolutely right. Oh,
this
absolutely.
Is very hard for politics wonks to get their head around.
Yeah, most people don't care.
Most people don't care. And so if you can distill your message, your election campaign into 3 words: take back control, get Brexit
Keep
done.
it simple.
Keep it simple. But yeah,
make America great again.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No,
or Obama,
you're right.
Change.
Change. Even better.
Yeah.
One word. Change.
Right,
Well, James O'Brien came up with a slogan, which was end the lies. So end the lies. And we can sort of rake over some of the coals of what the Conservatives did running up to the election, which was just absolutely morally abhorrent. Their leader running away, hiding in a fridge.
Yes.
They put Jacob Rees-Mogg in a box in case he said something ridiculous again. You had the fact that something like 85,000 messages that went out online were not true. Or misleading.
Yes.
And Labour put none out that were misleading.
I know.
And so but it wasn't just that. And one of the problems I'm seeing now, you mentioned the leadership or the people who are behind Corbyn blaming the Remainers. They're also blaming the media.
Sure.
And I find that kind of... I can understand the thinking, because they're saying, well, look, the Sun newspaper supported Blair in 1997 and that's why he won the landslide. But realistically,
I don't think it was the Sun.
We had 18 years of Tory government. We'd had the sleaze of the 1990s. The economy wasn't doing too well. And people did want to change. They wanted something new, and Tony Blair seemed like someone who could do that. I think he would have won without the support of the tabloids. And for a left-wing leader to say, well, there's no point in me even running because I'm not going to be supported by the tabloids, is a bit mad. But over and above that, I find it insulting that someone from Labour will say to me, as a Scouser, as someone from Liverpool, you just don't like Corbyn because of what you read about him in the Sun newspaper.
As if you
and it's like, I don't read the stuff. That's really insulting that you might think that I do. I don't read the Mail, I don't read the Express, I have no interest in any of that crap that's there. What I am interested in is the political record of the fact that the Labour Party had a 3-line whip to activate Article 50. What's in the manifesto? What are they going to do about Brexit? What are they, and that's what...
Well, one thing that also motivates me is hey, look, I marched against the Iraq War. I thought it was absolutely catastrophic and an awful thing. Blair ran for re-election after the war and won. I mean, the thought of, Blair is the worst thing ever and all sort of stuff like this. Yes, there was lots of problems. I remember when I when I came over first to Ireland in 1999, people were saying that Tory Blur, as some on the left were calling him, was he never quite knew what he was thinking. Well, a few years later, you got to see exactly what he thought. We should go to war in Iraq. And then they didn't like that. But one thing that stuck away, I live in Sedgefield. I'm a part of the Sedgefield constituency Labour Party. And
Sedgefield's now Conservative.
It has a Conservative Member of Parliament. That's right.
Sedgefield, one of the safest Labour seats, so safe that it was Tony Blair's seat, is now Conservative.
Had majorities over 20,000 votes, and it's now a Conservative by several thousand.
Okay.
So he won by about 4,000 or so votes. Okay. It's shocking. But what I was going to say is that one of the things that would happen in our conversations, yes, there's a number of people that are in the constituency, as they are in any other constituency party, that are supportive, particularly of Corbyn, that join the party for Corbyn, that are motivated by Corbyn and all the rest of it. But in Sedgefield, you also have a lot of people who have been members for a very, very long time, and were members before Tony Blair was a member, and were supportive of him as Prime Minister. And I'll never forget, as we were talking about, this goes back to the Miliband years, and Miliband handing the baton over to whoever would be next, and we were discussing who should be the next leader, and just right before Corbyn was first made leader, one of the members who's been a member for decades, without giving her age away, stood up and said, people say, I'm a Blairite and I'm these things and all this other stuff. You know what? I'm not going to apologize for more police. I'm not going to apologize for more hospitals. I'm not going to apologize for more doctors, more nurses. I'm not going to apologize for more people in education. I'm not going to apologize for the... And it just got boom, 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 again and again. It's reminiscent of this wonderful speech by Gordon Brown, talking about, when people say, what did the last Labour government do? I told them this. This is a 2-minute clip of boom, boom, boom. Minimum wage, just going through all the things that the Labour government was able to achieve, excellent things that they was able to achieve. And I think one of the things, I get the point, I see where people are coming from sometimes. Blair is not a particularly popular figure these days. Anyway, lots of worries about Middle Eastern conflict stuff that will be in people's minds again with Iran.
It's still rattling on, isn't it?
All those things said. But I don't blame Corbyn for the distancing of the party from Blair. I think a lot of that was happening under Ed Miliband as well. I think Ed was also
that's wrong. I think what
drawing the line.
Lady in your constituency did was right.
Oh no, I agree with her.
To say, no, let's look at what we did instead of being embarrassed about it and the last time we were in government we were awful. Sorry about that. Next time we're in government will be great. No, you say last time we were great and next time we'll be even better.
Yeah.
This isn't rocket science.
Sure.
And there's people who have paid a lot of money to advise the Labour Party who I don't know what planet they're from.
Sure. Yeah.
Or how they got their job. Because they're doing a terrible, terrible job. And is Seamus Milne, are they going to get rid of him for being?
He's on a permanent contract.
He's on a permanent contract to advise.
Which is a new thing. Typically, the top advisor to the leader would be on a contract fixed to the term of the leader.
Yeah.
But he's not.
Well, I hope Keir's not going to take too much.
Wait, so
I hope he wins.
We're running out of time. There's a few things I want to cover before we wrap up today. First of all, let's talk about lessons learned, especially as far as the left is concerned.
Yes.
And going into the presidential election.
Yes.
What do the Democrats need to look at Labour and go, oh my God, let's not do that?
Yes. Oh goodness, where to start? So I think there are some lessons learned. I mean, one is that having a manifesto that, sure, individually, various things may well have been very popular with folks, but together, they clearly were not. They lost vote share. People did not know what the priorities were of a Labour government.
Manifesto.
Of course I did. Of course I do. I'm a professor of law. I read these things. In government, I read these things.
Do you think that
I know all about this stuff.
even 1% of the electorate read it?
No, I think
100-page document or get Brexit done.
Let me tell you one of the things that was particularly a problem for me on the manifesto. And it wasn't so much what was in it, as it were, although there was issues one can have on that. I think what was more worrying to me about the manifesto was the Tories had a bland, short, less than half the size, I think, of the Labour manifesto. They're going to look at the, something like the realignment between Parliament and the courts and so on. I know from a senior member of the cabinet, the government, not the shadow cabinet, that means scrapping the UK Supreme Court. I know they want to bring back the law lords. So all this stuff about getting Brexit done so that British judges are the top thing, well, we don't like that because they didn't like prorogation. And what the Prime Minister tried to do on this. So Brexit was supposed to be about making the UK Supreme Court the Supreme Court. There's going to be an active move to end that, and that's going to be in the bills we're going to see. But I think with the Labour Party, not only did you have lots of stuff, and without any clear sense of what where the priorities were, and then no clear sense about on Brexit, was going to just leave it to everyone else to decide.
The headline thing was broadband. Like, that's
as if that was the biggest thing.
It wasn't in the manifesto.
I just
Like, what?
I didn't write that part.
Very, very typical of the way Jeremy Corbyn seems to think. When it's like you're having a conversation about Brexit and suddenly he'll go on about grouse hunting, or he'll come up with we should ban after work drinks because they're sexist. And you're like, okay, what? Where did that come from? I mean, I'm sure we can discuss that later, but oh my God, the Tories are about to take a landslide victory.
Yes, but the issue of the manifesto was that there wasn't just one. So the Labour Party created the general manifestos. So there were so many manifestos they didn't even know what they were. So there was the main one for everybody. They then created regional manifestos that largely said the same types of stuff about how their green industrial revolution was going to come to the northeast, or I was going to come to Yorkshire, I was going to go to Merseyside, and so on and so forth. They had all these regional ones, and then it got even worse. And they had regional manifesto launches. So you had the folks in the northeast who lost their seats coming up to talk about the Northeast Manifesto, Labour's for the Northeast. Surely an attempt to personalize things. And then they went one step further. You could log into the website, of course not going to labourmanifesto.co.uk, because that was a Tory-owned domain that had all information as why the manifesto was bad, and I think it was a mistake for Labour not to have seen that coming, given how Cummings works.
Yep.
But you can also download your own individual manifesto. You could type in kind of like what your priority issues are, and you could get a print out your own thing. So you had your own manifesto, your regional manifesto, your national manifesto. They were saying same things, but in different ways, and no one in the end knew quite what was this. And dare I say, they could have taken a page out of, yes, Tony Blair's book. This is the only bit that some people are going to hear now on the podcast. Take a page out of Tony Blair's book and have that little card of what are the 3, 4, 5, there was 5 in this case, but what those pledges were, what will they do? This get Brexit done, it won't be done. Brexit's far from over, I think, this month. But whatever the truth or otherwise of that claim, I agree.
Any sway that we
it's
had.
problem.
And something I just want to go back to when I said to blame Joe Swinson and Ian Blackford for going.
I'm happy to do that.
Even if they had voted with the Conservatives, they still wouldn't have got the 2/3 majority they needed. They needed Labour's support. And Jeremy Corbyn,
big mistake.
It was a trap. It was such an obvious trap, and he just walked into it because I think he's not very intelligent. And I think so many people have just given him this level of sainthood that he's the most amazing human being ever, and why can't you see it? Why can't you see it? And I just left feeling like it's some kind of like the Waco cult or the Jonestown cult, where you're like, I can't see why you think this person is even charismatic. Never mind the person to lead the country.
The one explanation I hear people say is along this lines. Why would he do something like this? That we mistake the purpose of the party, the purpose of its direction, for wanting to actually have power rather than to seize absolute control of the organization, root and branch, and that going to a general election would be a way of seeing off a lot of the critics that that he's had. So Sedgefield's Phil Wilson in the 2017 general election, in addition to putting through your letterbox, say, vote for me, vote Phil, had a handwritten note that was photocopied, literally a white piece of paper with a handwritten thing saying that why a vote for him was not a vote for Jeremy Corbyn. To me, I'm an old friend of Phil Wilson. If you're watching, Phil, you've got my support. Miss you in Parliament very much. I've always Phil's a great friend, and I think very highly of him. But with that, it was a surprise for some. That it wasn't any trouble all this, but folks, in a sense like that, lost their seats across the country, and thought, was that one thing to come from something like this? Of course, what also happened, I think the plan obviously backfired, that folks who are also very close to the leadership, like Laura Pidcock, lost their seat dramatically as well. And Ian Lavery nearly lost his seat as well, which I think none were counting on that.
Why is he not stood down immediately?
I've asked a lot of people about that.
Miliband did, Brown did, Kinnock did.
I think there's the reason I think, and there's an alternative explanation.
What's the reason?
In a nutshell.
Because I've got the reason I think, but go on.
Yeah, no, I'm sure I'll get it in a second. At least I hope to. So I think what makes it different from, we'll call them the good old days, is in the good old days there would be a deputy who could take over, a deputy that was trusted by somebody or allowed to actually be the deputy. I remember when people were voting for Thom Watson to be deputy leader. Of course, he stepped down, and his seat is now Conservative as well. His seat also went to the Tories. Thom Watson's seat is now Tory.
Oh wow!
It's been a real problem. But a lot of people voted for Watson, as they did for Corbyn, thinking he was a big socialist, was going to be favorable to things. Although from the start, he and Corbyn never really got on, and he was never really trusted. And so when, say, Blair or others would be on holiday, the deputy would be in charge, would speak at Prime Minister's questions. Thom Watson was never allowed to do that. It always went to somebody else. In Sedgefield, Thom Watson's never been forgiven, and Phil will be the first to remind us, for the guy who set things to see the end of Blair. So Sedgefield hasn't forgotten, or at least parts of Sedgefield have not forgotten Thom Watson. Though Thom is also a friend, and if you're watching Thom, best wishes to you in your post-election life. So I think that what was happening is Watson was out. There is no deputy of the Labour Party right now. There isn't anyone in the position to take on the seat, and it's just a uncomfortable position.
Leaders before, like Harriet Harman's done it, I think, and
Margaret Beckett.
Margaret Beckett did
and
it.
My personal view is I would call on Harman or Beckett to do it right now.
Why do you think he's clinging on to power?
The conspiracy-like alternative explanation that I have heard people say is this: there will be a negative finding on anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
It is going to be coming sooner rather than later, probably before the leadership result is announced, and that with that publish a report that would make an excellent time to just resign and then go down and then kind of take the blame for this and then leave things.
Take the blame for
well,
it.
I didn't say this is my view. It's not my view. I disagree. Hey, look, I disagree. I don't think that. But that's what I've heard some people say as the alternative.
I think he's clinging on to power because he wants to make sure continuity Corbyn, the Trots, the very left, hard left,
get rid of the centralists, get rid of the Blairites, get rid of the Remainers. A lot of the party want to cling to power when really they've got to be gotten rid of. We've got to do a Kinnock. But it was interesting looking back over the last few Labour defeats. It was like Jeremy Corbyn kind of he had the general missed the mood music of the country to the extent of Michael Foot. His sort of arrogance that came across to the electorate was reminiscent of Neil Kinnock in 1992 when he was like, yeah, we definitely won this, we've got it in the bag. And it was like, you don't.
Yeah.
And I always remember when Gordon Brown got in, and I was just like, why didn't you just stay as Chancellor? Why do you want to be Prime Minister?
Yeah.
Every time he was on TV, he just made me miserable.
Yeah.
I never saw him laugh or smile or have a good time.
Sure.
I
He's
like
one of those
the
people.
guy.
He's one of those people that when he smiled, he made you think he definitely was unhappy.
just
And he looked like
dour.
pains. Yeah.
And think about it, like Corbyn always took, he took himself very, very seriously, very seriously. And I just, as a way a leader comes across as a party, I don't think that's congenial. He sort of took the worst aspects of a lot of different Labour leaders and just smashed them all together and went, ta-da! West Labour defeat in 1935. And even that one was not a defeat for Labour because they had gotten another 100 seats under Clement Attlee. I mean, that was actually a good result in 35. So never have they lost that many.
Sure, no. I mean, I'm still smarting from the result. However, I've been a friend and a fan for a long time of Keir Starmer. I'm very buoyed. I was thrilled to see him enter the race. I wrote to Keir before he did, begging him to do it. He is someone, whenever I would hear the last few years people say to me, look, Thom, I'm a progressive left-winger like you are, but I got reservations around the leadership. I would say just hang on, because one day it'll be Keir.
Yeah, but it's Keir.
And we're going to get it. We're going to get it. I believe in it. Well, this is not the way I want it to happen. This is not the way I want it to happen.
I did see that you liked
very much
by Johnny Reynolds, mutual friend of ours,
he
the
is.
MP for
He is.
Hyde and Staley Bridge. I went to uni with Johnny.
Did you?
I ran for General Secretary of the University Union, and while he ran as internals.
Brilliant.
We ran together.
That's wonderful.
Double ticket. I lost, he won.
Wow.
Story of my life.
Johnny, if you're watching, how you doing, mate?
Hi, Johnny.
We'll have another pint when I see you next.
Yeah, Johnny.
Big fan of his.
He's
good man.
He's nominated. He was one of the nominators for Starmer.
He is.
And
Angela Rayner.
Do you think that?
So I agree with both, Johnny.
Angela Rayner. I'd rather see Jess Phillips as deputy. I think she comes across better.
Well, then unfortunately for you, she's not running for that. She's running for leader, and I think she's going to have a very difficult time on that. So far,
Jess Phillips.
Yeah,
I think she,
on multiple.
She's the best example of it not being about Brexit. The defeat wasn't about Brexit because her constituency 60% leave, and she won.
Yeah,
and she's a vocal Remainer.
Yeah,
she spoke at the rally in the march.
Yeah,
in October.
She's a great speaker. Yeah,
and. I like it because I think the dynamic of her doing Prime Minister's Question Times against Boris Johnson would be great because she comes across as like a northern mum. Hey, soft lad, grabs the bully by the ear, goes outside the school gates, and someone needs to do that to Boris Johnson.
She's a great debater. She's very eloquent. She's got a lot of charisma. There's a lot about her. I think has a lot of great ideas, and also is very much in touch with the grassroots. And I think I've been saying forever. I'll keep saying it. That Brexit was not about Brexit. It's about other things. And I think she definitely gets that, and that is part of why she's been successful.
Nice. And I saw Angela Rayner at I was in the audience for the Channel 4 Anything Brexit debate.
Oh yes, well done.
And I think Angela Rayner came across as I think she was a bit too harsh. I don't think she didn't come across as friendly and approachable like Jonathan Barclay from the Greens or.
Well, I didn't see that, so I don't know what she's like. I've known Angela more than Jess. I've seen Angela in Parliament. We've met outside of Parliament, where I'm regularly in touch with her as well. I've got a different view. I think very strongly of her. And the deputy role, I think, is a different type of thing. I think what's important traditionally is this is someone who will be particularly in touch with the trade union movement, will be and it leads the organization. So when it's time for the next general election, will be a good campaigner. And I think she's been very good on that. Much as John Prescott in times past was very much on the streets, in the battle bus. Let's do this. I think that's what you need, someone on the street doing that. And that's also why Thom Watson was good
in that debate. It's really frustrating watching debates go on, and you think, why don't you say this? Well, and that comedy thing where the guy's in the other room.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful. I like it.
You can't think, because one of the arguments that Angela Rayner made was that obviously the Lib Dems went in with the Tories and started going on about tuition fees, and it was an open goal for. Joe Swinton to say, well, actually, who said they wouldn't introduce tuition fees in 1997 and then introduce tuition fees?
Yeah, sure.
Who said they wouldn't top them up in 2001?
Sure.
And then top them up. And then, as soon as Angela Rayner started talking, she just go, Iraq.
Yeah.
And she would have won the audience, but she didn't.
Yeah.
She just went, oh yeah, well, we're sorry about that, and we were. And then when she tried to criticise Labour's past record, Angela Rayner quite rightly said, that was Labour then, this is Labour now.
Sure, yeah.
That's the way you deal with people bringing up stuff from the past. You go, oh, you
Yes.
voted for this. So, yeah, that was what the party was then.
Swinson
This is what the
should have
party.
said that.
Things
Yeah.
have changed,
Yeah.
obviously, and that's a reasonable answer. But Joe Swinson didn't give it. And I think, you know, like I say, I felt like I feel bad for her that she lost her seat by only like 100 votes or so, but at the same time, I think she's an idiot for going into the election and ran such a terrible campaign and lost a lot of the goodwill that the Lib Dems have built up over 2019 by being so vocally supportive of the Remain campaign, something that we didn't get from the Labour leadership. We got it from everybody else in Labour.
Yeah, sure.
You know, Jess Phillips was happy to talk on stage. Thom Watson was happy to talk on stage. You know, all of the MEPs. You know, we've done podcasts with Richard Corbett, who's the MP for Yorkshire until the end of this month.
Yes, till the end of this month.
And we've had lots of support from Labour MPs and Labour MEPs, and even Labour Lords, like Andrew Adonis. I've spoken on panels with Andrew a lot of times.
Yeah.
And it's been this whole thing that we've been held back by the leadership. So hopefully, if you're watching this and you still haven't joined Labour, or you know,
do it.
Please just do it. Just do it. Join, vote, and then you can leave. You don't have to stay. You don't have to write a contract in blood for the rest of your life. It's fine. Just vote, and
vote for Keir Starmer.
I like Jess Phillips as well, but I think I'm going to go with your suggestion on this and go for Keir.
We've always been friends.
Just to have a vote would be really, really
absolutely
helpful.
right. Let your voice
because
be
we
heard.
have to make sure that Rebecca Long Bailey or who's the guy in Dubai.
He's not running for the leadership. Barry Gardner.
Barry Gardner.
He decided not to run
after all. He said he could win an election. He said, I could win an election, and you're like...
Well, we're not going to find out. We're not going to find out.
Just don't live in the real world. Keir Starmer, he didn't go to private school. He went to Leeds University, rose up under his own steam to become the Director of Public Prosecutions in the United Kingdom.
After being a very successful defensive, he was a barrister for the defence. So he was on the other side for a long time. He represented the National Union of Mine Workers, amongst many other clients. He also fought and won the McLibel case against McDonald's.
And he also fought against the tabloids as well.
He certainly did. That was one of his earliest cases.
This is something major that we're going to have to tackle in the next few years, is the fact that the media is so ridiculous and it gets away with murder. It gets away with so much, which it really shouldn't get away with.
But he has many advantages in addition to the values and in addition to successes and achievements as a barrister. He was also, when he was in charge of the CPS, he was prosecuting members of parliament for the expenses scandal. He also brought in new sentencing guidelines for the sentencing of violent offenders, for domestic violence, for violence against women and girls. So in addition to all of that other stuff that people might like...
He seems like a really nice guy.
He's also a nice chap. But in addition to all of that, he has something that no one else has had, I think, for a long time. He was director of CPS. He knows how to run a large national organization well. And I think that people management, knowing how to work with an HR group, making things right, not having mistakes in the office. At the moment, the Labour Party staff are right now considering, I think, maybe taking industrial action because there's a restructure that they're looking to happen. He's run an organization, and I think it would be particularly helpful to have, after a lot of, I think, disorganization for a long time. It's a hard thing to learn, to have someone who knows how to do it and also do it in the right way. So there you are, final thought.
Okay.
That's my pitch.
Join the Labour Party, or you can sign up as an associate member. I think is it January the 24th you can do that?
It's a very short window.
Short window, there's 48 hours.
Do it on the 24th.
When you can join for 25 quid and you're not actually a member, you just get to vote. But please do, and please vote for anyone but Rebecca Long Bailey. Because we don't want continuity Corbyn. We want something new and fresh and dynamic that is going to take the fight to the Tories, because the next 5 years are going to be absolutely crazy. And we are going to lose a lot of rights, we're going to lose a lot of money. Yeah.
We're going to lose a lot of families and
happening
jobs
already.
and everything. It's not going to be nice, and people aren't going to be nice to each other about it. You know, they say we're all in it together, but there's going to come a point where things get really bad, and it's going to be, what did you vote in the referendum? You voted for this. You voted for my child to not go to university, or for me.
Well, the day the
My
new
life
Tory Sedgefield MP voted to pass the withdrawal bill,
Yeah.
that same day, Hitachi Rail Europe, the clue was in the name, its Twitter is Hitachi Rail EU, said they're laying off 250 people.
Yeah.
It's starting, that's in its constituency.
Yeah.
It's all starting to unravel.
Yeah. But that, again, that's
Whereas Phil Wilson brought Hitachi Rail Europe to Naycliffe, and has been very, one of the reasons he's been so for the EU is the substantial investment it's brought to the constituency, both in Hitachi, also Net Park that Durham University is part of. You now have a changing wind that's blowing, and now things are beginning to collapse.
as predicted.
On that note.
As predicted. Someone get me in as a political advisor. I'll say, this is what's going to happen, and then it will happen, because that's what's been going on for the last 3 years. Okay, Thom, thank you very much
pleasure as always,
for talking
Graham.
to me. And yeah, until next time, here's to the EU. The EU. Yay, cheers.
I like the EU.